right. Hey there, folks. A couple more folks joining us in the room. Welcome to, I think this is the 48th episode of Financing Philadelphia's Future, our ongoing conversation about Philadelphia getting a public bank at some point. Today, we're going to have a conversation with Jawad Pulin. I will tell you a little bit more about him in a moment, but let's do a little bit of the housekeeping. Thank you for joining us. The best way to participate is to use the speaker view using that icon in the top right corner of your screen. We encourage you to submit your questions through the chat, letting us know which section of the city you're from. And if you want to join our mailing list and join the coalition, you can enter your email in the chat. Please include your name with it. Thank you so much. This is a quick half hour, so we're going to jump right in. I am Vanessa Lowe. I host Vanessa's Money Hour on G-Town Radio, and I'm a member of the coalition. So today, I want to introduce you to Jawad Pulin. Excuse me. Originally from Philadelphia, Jawad was a Gates Millennium Scholar and a graduate of Georgetown College. He has a BA in government from Columbia University and a master's in education policy. He is Council Member Jeffery Young Jr.'s legislative director. That is his role today. That's what he's bringing to us today, because we want to talk about a resolution that Councilmember Young brought forward to essentially get us to the next stage of the Philadelphia Public Bank movement. You all may recall it was back in, hold on, let me get it right. The ordinance to create the Philadelphia Public Financial Authority was passed on March 17th, 2022. 15 to 1 vote. 15 people said yes, only 1 said no, and by our city council people. And the short version is Mayor Kenny never signed it, and our current mayor, Sherelle Parker, has not signed it. And that is what is needed to help move us forward. But Councilmember Young brought a resolution number 250455, authorizing, and he's with the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development, to hold hearings to investigate the administrative's progress on the establishment of the Philadelphia Public Financial Authority. And that's essentially the precursor to creating a public bank. So with that background, let me turn to Jawad and say, welcome. Welcome. We really appreciate you coming. We understand Councilmember Young could not join us, so we appreciate having you. So please say hello to our audience and give us a few words.
Sure. So good afternoon, everybody. For those who don't know me, and thank you, Vanessa, for the introduction, but my name is Jawad Pulin. I serve as legislative director for Councilman Jeffery Young Jr. in the 5th District here in Philadelphia. And so my job is to research public policy, draft legislation for the councilman, and I also clerk the committees in which the councilman chairs, which is the Streets and Services Committee, which we actually had one yesterday, but about 5 hours, so it's pretty exhausting. But I'm really, really excited to talk to you guys about a topic that I've got a chance to sink my teeth into these last few months. Public banking, here in Philly. I'm aware that the Philly Public Banking Coalition has been advocating for a public bank for more than a decade now. I know that Councilman Derek Green was a staunch advocate for public banking during his time in council. There was a hearing held in 2016 that sort of laid the groundwork for what direction the Philly Banking Coalition wanted to go in with regards to having a public bank, so what were the purposes? And I think a lot of the discussion around there was, just in a sort of skepticism of some of the large financial institutions that have really come to dominate banking and finance, not just in our city, but in our country as well. And this need for a potential alternative, one that could be, more responsive to, community concerns with regards to, financing small businesses and getting loans to, people who need them, who may not necessarily be able to get them from those larger financial institutions. One of the takeaways from, or I should say one of the results from that hearing was that the city issued an RFP for, essentially to conduct a feasibility study of a potential public bank in the city. And HRNA Advisors was selected through that competitive RFP process, and they released their findings in 2020 amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. Where we just saw a huge wave of economic calamity all at once, really put just certainly a significant amount of economic hardship for people at the lowest end of the economic ladder, that I think made it far more crucial that we talk more about these sort of alternative economic models and ways to really create institutions that can better serve people really at the most marginalized economic positions. And so, that report was released in 2020, and it kind of outlined, some strategies and some pathways forward when it came to Philly public banking. And so, in terms of like a traditional public bank, it still has to follow a lot of the sort of federal as well as state guidelines when it comes to federal insurance and banking and the like. And a public bank in the city of Philadelphia, managed by the city of Philadelphia, constituted, in that regard, would almost certainly require state enabling legislation. And there was even a suggestion that, the Pennsylvania state constitution may have to be amended. And that's just a more treacherous path. I mean, to amend the constitution, you need like the bill to pass both houses or both chambers in the Pennsylvania General Assembly in like multiple sessions. And so a much easier path forward to creating a kind of institution that can serve a lot of the functions that the Philly Public Banking Coalition, that a lot of advocates want it to do, is potentially through a local financial authority. So that's something that that state law already permits the city of Philadelphia to create. And so, Councilmember Derek Green, along with several other members of council, they chose to go that route to create what would be a public financial authority, not necessarily a public bank, but something that could potentially turn into a public bank down the road, and potentially, keep the wheels moving for advocacy at the state level, to really give the state the ability to essentially grant municipalities the authority to create public banks, like we've seen in California, and like we've seen with efforts in New York. Although I don't believe those efforts in New York were successful. The problem here, and the biggest reason why the councilman wanted to ultimately bring this resolution, is that the ordinance passed. The financial authority was created. It was passed in 2022, and Mayor Kenny strongly signaled that he was not a fan of the idea, that he really did not want to see a financial authority. There were, questions about whether or not such an institution would be set up to compete with, commercial banks, to compete with CDFIs. And there was a general just hesitation on his part to want to actually see through this ordinance. And that matters because ultimately this is something that will be housed under the purview of the executive branch. And so when the ordinance was passed, the mayor kind of just said, well, you passed it, but I'm just not going to bother to really fund it or constitute it, set it up, appoint the board or anything. And because of that, the idea kind of just fizzled out. Councilman Derek Green, he would later leave council in order to run for mayor. And so the idea lacked really a chief advocate until, me and the councilman sat down and we talked, and, the councilman mentioned, hey, this was something that, kind of just got tabled. This is really something we need to bring back. And at the very least, get a sense, from this current administration, where they are on this issue, because we know that Councilmember Parker voted for this piece of legislation. And so where does Mayor Parker stand on it? And so that brings us here today. And I'm really excited to, chat a little bit more about the public banking idea and how we can continue to move this ball forward.
Fantastic. Thank you for that background. Sounds like you're also supportive of this idea. So give us a sense, the resolution to have the hearing passed. So talk us through the process of getting to a hearing. When will that happen? How does that happen?
And so we don't have one scheduled as of now. I'm continuing to talk with the councilman as we sort of, balance our other legislative priorities, where we want it to fit in the calendar. The good news is we're on the committee in which it's being heard, the Commerce and Economic Development Committee. So it shouldn't be too difficult for us to get a hearing. The councilman who chairs it is Councilmember Mark Squilla. But we don't currently have a date, but more than happy to, let you know when we identify a date in which we would want to hold this hearing. Almost certainly, once it's listed, we'll likely have members of the administration sort of come to us and kind of brief us beforehand, and just really, really excited to sort of get questions answered and ultimately have the hearing so that we can get just get folks on the public record on where we are with this. Is this a priority for this administration? If not, is there something else that they see as a priority that that the public banking coalition may want to circle back with? Just kind of getting questions answered on something that had a lot years and years and years of advocacy, and then because of one mayor's decision, just kind of was ground to a stop.
And are you familiar with or know about people within Mayor Parker's administration who's working on this or having conversations about this? Because they would be the key people, I think, at the hearing, right, to talk about what has been the progress on this.
Exactly. Not many. I mean, usually when you introduce a piece of legislation like this, you at the very least get an email going, hey, this is on our radar. We'll try to get you an answer or two. But then sometimes they don't, and sometimes it's like, well, wait till it's actually listed, and we'll wait until there's sort of forward progress on the council side for this topic before we decide to weigh in or engage. And so, but certainly awaiting more information.
Okay. Pamela Haynes put a good question in the chat. Do you know if because one of the things that's also happened in all this time is we have lots of new city council members, right? So many of them went to run for mayor. So we've got new council members, some we're really excited about, who may also pick this up. But what do you hear about the support from the council members who are currently serving?
Yeah, so definitely a lot of interest. I know we got nearly half of the signatures, or half of the council to sign for our resolution, a handful of which were also supportive of the effort to create the bank back in 2021. Generally speaking, the sort of the commentary I would say from council and from their staffs is generally where we're monitoring this idea. We're really, really interested in it. We'd like to see it move along. We had questions too. It kind of fizzled out, and then just other priorities took over, and we couldn't really circle back on it. But if nothing else, we'd like to know, one, where the Kenney administration was on this and why they, decided to hold it up, and where the Parker administration is, and how they want to move it forward.
Yeah, yeah. Peter, I'm going to turn to you for any other questions in a moment. But one of the things I just want to point out is Mayor Parker's initiative to create 30,000 affordable housing. I mean, affordable housing is one of the main, sort of types of things that would be so critical for a public bank to support. New York City uses their pension money for these kind of things. And so there's different ways and different things that already exist that would really support her project. If we modeled, sort of things like New York City using, funds from the pension fund. So do you know if that's been part of the conversation, or what do you think of that idea? And maybe is there any update on the 30,000 affordable housing, project initiative?
Yeah, but there certainly can be. I mean, the council insisted on very, very significant oversight of the mayor's $800 million bond proposal, and so we're continuing to look through the mayor's proposal, the funding levels for the various programs. And so absolutely, I think that would be a valuable part of the conversation as we, continue to monitor the proposal, monitor the, disbursements of funds, in the ensuing years. I know that the Public Banking Coalition, I know one of the emphasis points has been that they do want to see like a targeted set aside of investments in the pension fund, to be targeted towards Philadelphia, particularly for housing development. So I definitely think like tying those conversations in could be very, very, very valuable. And it's the good thing about holding these hearings that you can get creative about how you how you create the panels and how you create how you create the panels and how you get stakeholders together in order to engage on the issue. And I think that can lead to a lot of creative ideas and a lot of collaboration.
Okay. Well, the name has changed, but I see Earl Steelen. You have a question or a comment?
Can you hear me all right?
Now I can hear you. Go ahead.
All right. I'm an attorney in Colorado, and I'm the chair of the Colorado Public Banking Group. We call ourselves the Rocky Mountain Public Banking Institute. I'm also a legal advisor to the Public Banking Institute, of which, of course, Peter Winslow is a key board member. One of the things we have concluded is that a local city that is home rule, as I understand Philadelphia is, I live in Denver, it's home rule. Under home rule principles, we obtained a ruling from the legal arm of the or legal department of the Colorado legislature that a home rule city like Philadelphia could, without state legislation, enact a public bank. There are a couple provisions of state law, though, that need to be changed in regard to regulating a bank. Those rules were designed entirely for private banks, where they're very important and necessary. But for a public bank, they're not at all necessary and would actually hinder the bank and prevent it from successfully operating. And that ruling I mentioned, I'd be glad to share that with you and with Peter, says that the home rule bank would confine its lending to its own city, so that under home rule, it would pass muster at the state level. My guess is we assume that public banks will oppose this. You know that's going to be true anyway if you go for state legislation. But if our legal arguments hold up in court, then you could have your public bank in operation a lot sooner through your own municipal actions. And we're in the process of wrapping up some legal research to make the case for this. But the changes from state law that I'm talking about are all changes that the Bank of North Dakota has had in effect from the beginning. So it's not a surprise, and we know they work. And they've been a very stable and safe bank. So we know that these state provisions that the Bank of North Dakota does not have, but are needed for private banks, are not needed for a public bank in Philadelphia or anywhere else.
Thank you, Earl, for that information. And yes, absolutely. If you haven't already, share that information with Peter. Peter, I'm going to go to you. What questions do you have or comments do you have?
Deb Feigert has put a question in the chat, which I'd like to elaborate on a little bit. One of the major initiative for Mayor Parker is the Housing Opportunities Made Easy legislation that it intends to borrow $800 million. That doesn't solve the housing problem in Philadelphia, but it sure is a good start. Deb's question is to whether the council would support bonding the HOME program through the PPFA. And I would also point out that if Mayor Kenny had moved forward with the legislation for the PPFA, we would have a public bank in Philadelphia now, and the cost of financing the HOME program would eliminate the $3 million fees that would be incurred up front, plus would save the city tens of millions of dollars each year in financing costs, because the public bank could finance at a much lower interest rate than would be required for a general obligation bond. So the question is, would the council be supportive of financing the mayor's program through the PPFA and subsequently through a public bank?
You're muted, Jawad.
Sorry about that. Okay, I'll try to take those questions in reverse. So on the point about the home bonds, so they were intended to be dispersed in two tranches, one in 2027, about $400 million, the other in 2029, the other $400 million. And so just even considering that theoretically would depend on if the financial authority could be set up in enough time. Essentially now it's dormant. And changeovers in administration probably means that if there isn't a working group currently established, let alone, one of the requirements in the ordinance was for it to have a board, what the timeline would be or the time frame would be actually getting it set up, that could complicate things. My guess is that wouldn't be ready by the time the first tranche of home bonds are issued. But if it could be set up in enough time, I think that would be a valuable conversation to have. But then, we'd have to know that one, is the current administration interested in continuing to pursue the establishment of the Public Financial Authority, and then two, that the PPFA is the means through which they want to finance the Mayor's Home Program. To sort of respond to kind of an earlier, just kind of an earlier point about just city of Philadelphia will require its statutory authority at the state level in order to do it. Home rule primarily allows the city of Philadelphia to enact its own city charter, without having to first have that charter be authorized at the state level. But there's still plenty of areas of public policy where the city doesn't have the authority to just go it alone. So, we can't regulate gun laws within, city limits. We can't set our own minimum wage. We're still preempted at the state level, even though we're a home rule charter city. And so my understanding from, the reading of, that feasibility study from HRNA is that the city can establish, the financial authority under the economic development financing law. But there's no current state enabling law that allows for municipalities to establish a public bank the way there is in California, and the way there obviously has existed in North Dakota. But I'd be very interested in reading about the legal research your group has been conducting, because I know that there's always like open questions about what the sort of statutory and constitutional leeway that municipalities have to do X, Y, Z. And if it's the case that it's something that that the city of Philadelphia could do essentially by right without having to go to Harrisburg, I think that would definitely inspire a lot more people to pursue that option. I know a big part of why the financial authority was chosen was because it was just the path of least resistance.
Okay, got it. I see Stan has his hand up. I'm sorry, did you have something else to say, Jawad?
Well, I was going to also address that. I know there was an earlier question. What do you think council can do if the mayor says they are not going to implement the legislation? Good question. I mean, if council passes an ordinance, it gets kicked essentially to the executive branch, where it's the executive branch's responsibility to implement it or to not implement it. But that doesn't mean that council doesn't have oversight power. That doesn't mean that they don't have subpoena power to compel the attendance of witnesses at any given point in time to answer questions about any particular aspect of city governance. That doesn't mean that there isn't potential litigation options. I don't think that it would ever get to that point. The administration and council tend to want to work as collaboratively as possible on a given issue, and the administration certainly their attitude, certainly for as long as I've worked here, and has been we take special interest in what council members want to do, and we want to work as closely and as collaboratively as possible. They may have sometimes concerns or another, but they're usually very, very constructive in terms of trying to help along. And so this one's a little weird because it hasn't been a council priority essentially since 2022. It has effectively been an administrative responsibility since then, and it's just something that they haven't picked up. But part of the hearing is to answer those questions about where the mayor's office is, or where the administration is on this. Is this something they want to pursue, but it's just they've had other priorities? Is it something that they're maybe less interested in pursuing this version, but if council considered another structure or form of a financial authority, they consider that? That's what the point of the resolution and the hearing. Those are the type of questions we want to answer.
Okay, thank you. We've got about 6 minutes left. Let's see if we can get Connie Belay's question in. Connie?
Hi. This isn't just a question, but when we got legal advice from Holland and Knight about forming the financial authority, and they are like renowned in the United States as experts in banking, that was a way that under the authority, you can set up a public bank. The city couldn't do it directly, but the authority could. And so I just throw that out there, that's the whole reason for the authority. Thanks.
I believe my reading of it was, yeah, that essentially that as a separate entity, the public bank would be created through the financial authority. I believe that's what I had read from the HRNA report.
That's correct, Jawad. And also, we have decoupled the establishment of the PPFA from the need for financing it, for an allocation from City Council, for example, to fund the PPFA. The PPFA can issue its own bonds, for example, to bootstrap its own existence, or it can solicit capital or deposits from other institutions, such as the endowment of the University of Pennsylvania, just as an example. So there are many ways that we could go into existence once the board comes into existence, which is a requirement of the incorporation laws of Pennsylvania, that the mayor has to appoint the initial board.
There you go. All right, we're coming down to the end. Can you, maybe a closing question is, so what is the legislative agenda that you all are working on in Councilmember Young is working on? Give us some highlights.
Some highlights include public safety, particularly when it comes to parental responsibility over juveniles. That's definitely something that we've been working on. Also trying to provide some level of tax, interest, and penalty relief for homeowners, particularly ones that may be late on their utilities. And then just share the Streets and Services Committee, continuing to oversee a steady stream of legislation related to traffic calming, street safety, bike lanes, Vision Zero, et cetera. Just really trying to focus on as much as possible on quality of life concerns in the 5th District, especially related to sanitation, illegal dumping, trash, cleaning, graffiti, et cetera.
Okay, thank you for that. Peter, taking it back to you. Any more questions? I'm not seeing everybody. I don't think so. I want to make sure we're getting all the questions that we want to.
I was going to say, yeah, this one pretty fast.
Yeah, the half hour goes really fast. Peter.
Yes, I think, Vanessa, rather than get into another issue, we might want to wrap up the recorded part of Financing Philadelphia's Future and then continue, if Jawad, if you're able to stay with us for a while longer, in an unrecorded general conversation.
There you go. All right.
I'll probably stay for a few minutes longer than after on, but definitely we'll stay after the end of the recording.
All right, I'll turn that over to Peter. Thank you all for joining us. We're here every month on that 4th Tuesday. And again, put your name and your email in the chat, and we can add you to the list so you get notices of who our next guest is. Oh, looks like it's I was a little confused as I saw a name, but I don't want to give it up, tell you who our next guest is if I'm not absolutely sure. Thank you all and have a great day.